Will Morocco and Western Saharan separatists go to war? The Polisario Front says Rabat has invaded a buffer zone. Morocco says the front is blocking trade to Mauritania. So, is this the end of the ceasefire in Western Sahara? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Bernard Smith. A 30-year-old ceasefire is over in the disputed territory of Western Sahara. That's according to the pro-independence Polisario Front. It says Moroccan troops have launched an attack in the region. Morocco's military says it's only set up a security cordon after elements of the Polisario Front blocked traffic on the only road linking it to Mauritania and the rest of Africa. In a moment, we'll bring in our panel to discuss this further. But first, this report from Laura Burden-Manley.
A conflict frozen for 3 decades, but never resolved. Now, a fragile truce in the Western Sahara between Morocco and a pro-independence group is under threat. The Polisario Front has been fighting for an independent state in Western Sahara, an area wedged between Mauritania to the south and Morocco to the north, with a population of around 500,000 people. But Morocco also claims this vast stretch of desert. Rabat accuses the Polisario Front of blocking a main highway that's preventing the flow of goods between Mauritania and Morocco. But the Polisario Front accuses Morocco of carrying out attacks against its people and of igniting war.
Morocco has publicly and officially acknowledged the fact of launching an armed attack on a group of civilians demonstrating peacefully in Western Sahara, a blatant violation of the ceasefire, and it has led to the resumption of hostilities between the Moroccan occupying forces and the forces of the Frente Polisario.
Morocco's government held an emergency meeting to address the situation.
This road is important when it comes to the movement of civilians and goods, and because such actions were a violation of the UN-sponsored ceasefire agreement, Morocco, in order to fulfill its duties, ordered its military forces to intervene and build a sand barrier to protect the area from any future breaches.
Negotiations between Morocco, the Polisario, Algeria and Mauritania have remained suspended for several months. The UN is calling for restraint.
The Secretary-General remains committed to doing his utmost to avoid the collapse of the ceasefire that has been in place since 6 September 1991. And he is determined to do everything possible to remove all obstacles to the resumption of the political process.
The two sides have battled for control of the region since 1975, when Spain pulled out of the area. Morocco took control, but an armed rebellion led to a war that continued until 1991, when the UN brokered an armistice. But it's a conflict that's left tens of thousands of people displaced from their homes. Many of the Sahrawi refugees have been living for decades in vast, sprawling camps along Algeria's border with Morocco. The conditions are harsh, and they continue to rely on humanitarian assistance to survive. But the political impasse continues, and it's unlikely these people will return to their homes anytime soon. Laura Burden-Manley, Al Jazeera.
So the Polisario Front is a liberation movement made up of ethnic Sahrawis. They want to drive Morocco out of Western Sahara. Its members say the former Spanish colony is their homeland. They've pushed for independence for decades. Morocco claims this desert as its own. The two sides fought over the territory for 16 years before agreeing to a UN-backed ceasefire in 1991. Today, more than 2/3 of the region is controlled by Morocco. A planned referendum on its status has not taken place. Neighbouring Algeria and Mauritania have called on both sides to show restraint. Algeria is the main supporter of the Polisario Front, and many refugees from the region live there. Let's bring in our guests. From Valencia is Sidi Omar, representative of the Polisario Front at the United Nations in New York. From Casablanca is Yasmine Hasnaoui, North Africa specialist and board member of the Institute of Saharan Studies Andalous. And from Lisbon is Riccardo Fabiani, project director covering North Africa at the International Crisis Group. Thanks to you all for joining us. Riccardo, I'll begin with you, if I may. Just help us understand why Algeria is so important to all of this. It's the main supporter of the Polisario Front. Why and how much influence does Algeria have over what happens next?
Algeria is undoubtedly, I would say, a key piece of this complicated puzzle. First of all, because we're talking about one of the largest countries in the region, and obviously one of Morocco's most important neighbors. So even just by geographical terms, we're talking about a very important actor in this area. But most importantly, Algeria has opposed Morocco's annexation of the Western Saharan territory since 1975 and has supported, hosted and financed the Polisario Front, as well as hosting a large section of the refugee population in the Tindouf area, so in the refugee camps that are in Tindouf. So Algeria is effectively the main backer of the Polisario Front since the mid-70s and has enormous influence over what the Polisario Front does and is likely to do, I would say, even in the next few days. What Algeria decides to do has enormous influence on the Polisario. And obviously, Morocco is looking at Algeria in this situation, hoping that they will do something to maintain the situation, to keep the situation under control.
So, Yasmine, is this then something that Morocco must try and resolve with Algeria, not with the Polisario Front? This is to do with Morocco and Algeria, is it?
Well, actually, what happens now is, let me. Of course, it's the Algeria who is who holds the Polisario Front. They are responsible of their, the Sahrawi, the women, the elderly, and the children in the Tindouf areas, and they are responsible of the dire condition that they live in. Algeria is the main backer of the Rust, and it was cited in several times since 2007. It was Algeria was cited several times at the United Nations Security Council that they should step up to the plate and not say that they are only observer to this artificial conflict, but rather they have to step up to the plate and find a solution with Morocco. If we go back to history, yes, I agree with what the previous speaker told. He said that Algeria was against Morocco's reintegration to Moroccan Western Sahara in 1975, and that started with Houari Boumediene. It started with the Sand War, and from the Boumediene, then Boumediene implemented this ideology through the National Popular Army, and it went on until now. So who's responsible? Yes, Algeria, but also the Rust, who should really they should recognize that what happens now goes within the international legitimacy. Is that now we see that the UN Security Council, they call for a political solution, pragmatic, which go in line with Morocco's proposal, the autonomy plan.
OK, so Sidi, Algeria is your main backer. How much influence does it have on whether this ceasefire holds, on what the Polisario Front does next?
Well, thank you very much for the question. But before I proceed, I'd like to clarify whether this session is on Western Sahara or Algeria, because I have been invited to talk about Western Sahara as representative of the Frente Polisario to the United Nations in New York.
It is, sir. Yes.
If the session is on Algeria, then you have to call upon someone from Algeria. I will not proceed on the understanding that this is about Algeria or Morocco.
No, sir. It's about.
I'm invited to talk about Western Sahara and that's the main issue that I can engage anybody.
No, sir. This is about Western Sahara. Algeria does have influence over the Polisario Front, but I'd like you to tell me what the front believes. Then the Polisario Front believes is the next step. What's going to happen next?
I'm sorry, but this is not the right way to start a discussion on Western Sahara. It's already started on a preconceived assumption, which we indeed need to engage. So I'm really sorry, but I cannot proceed in a conversation with Algeria. I'm not entitled to speak on anybody's behalf except Western Sahara.
Speaking only on behalf of the Polisario Front, what do you believe is going to happen next with the ceasefire?
No. Yes, I will tell you frankly, but if we would just rephrase the whole beginning of this session, because it has been already framed within the context.
Well, we just had to give some background to the relationship between Morocco and Algeria, which matters. But certainly I'm happy to only accept your speaking on behalf of the Polisario Front, sir.
That's a secondary question. That's a secondary question.
All right, okay.
But the whole context, the framework has been established as that of Algeria and so on and so on. So
tell me this then. Tell me this, sir. Let me ask you this question instead. Why have the Polisario Front supporters decided to block that main road linking the Western Sahara to Mauritania? What was the motivation for blocking that road, sir?
Very simple. Morocco has been occupying Western Sahara for over 4 decades. That's already recognized by the General Assembly in 1979 and 1980. These are General Assembly resolutions that define Morocco's presence in Western Sahara as an occupying power. And what happened is that the Sahrawis, after 30 years of waiting for a referendum that the United Nations elaborated along with the African organization to allow our people to exercise their internationally recognized right to self-determination and accepted by Morocco itself, that referendum has not been held, mainly because Morocco has blocked it, fearing obviously the outcome of that vote. As a sign of protest against Morocco's continued occupation of large parts of Western Sahara, Sahrawi civilians went to the southern western part of Western Sahara to protest a road that goes from the occupied part of Western Sahara into a buffer strip and then into the liberated territory of Western Sahara. In brief terms, what happens actually is that Morocco cannot have its own cake and eat it. Morocco occupies a large part of Western Sahara, and what they wanted with that road is to grab more land that obviously does not belong to Morocco, which is a violation of a ceasefire against which our civilians have protested peacefully.
All right, Sidi, just before I ask Yasmine to comment on that, last month the UN Security Council passed a resolution calling for a realistic, practicable and enduring solution based on compromise. So, Sidi, do you think the UN is sort of trying to push you away from the referendum idea and instead take what Morocco has offered, which is this autonomy within the state of Morocco? Is that now not just a much more realistic and practical solution to this conflict?
The Security Council resolution, the latest one, 2584, has more than one just single operative paragraph. What you have just cited is operative paragraph 2, but there's also operative paragraph 4 and more, which calls for a peaceful, lasting solution which provides for the self-determination of the people of Western Sahara, which means 3 main facts. Recognition by the Security Council of a people called the people of Western Sahara as a political reality, recognition of Western Sahara as a territory separate from Morocco over which the Security Council does not recognize any sovereignty, and thirdly, that any solution to be lasting and peaceful, it must provide for the self-determination of the people of Western Sahara. This is the language of the Security Council. As for realistic, practicable, and so forth, I can just say that what is realistic, it is in the eye of the beholder.
Yasmine, Morocco spent billions of dollars in this region over the last decade and has still not managed to win the hearts and minds of the Sahrawis. Why has it failed?
Well, actually, let me just, I need to replicate like what it was said recently, where it was said that Morocco is an occupier. There is no such a word occupying of the international law.
All right,
Morocco,
but the challenges of winning over hearts and minds, why is...
No, because we have to talk about the international law. So with me as an expert, I have to correct that there is no word called occupation.
Okay.
So one has to go to the UN document. Secondly, to explain that Guerguerat's problem, just to put the viewer into the context. So what happened in Guerguerat's passage is the outcome of the previous and current United Nations Security Council resolution, which called for pragmatic solution to the Moroccan Western Sahara conflict. This solution, which is based on compromise, go in line with Morocco's plan of autonomy. So what happened is that the Polisario, with the help of Algeria, were not happy about the outcome of these resolutions. So what they did, what it was done, it was like the women, youth, and the elderly. They were sent out of Tindouf during this pandemic, this crisis.
All
they
right.
went to block the Guerguerat's passage and block the civil and commercial flow. This is a defiance of the international community, and this is a defiance of all the former UN Security Council. Now, talking about the development that is happening in the southern provinces, one has to say that 73% of the Sahrawi population, they live in the southern provinces. They all enjoy, they are all part of many of them are part of are represented in the parliament.
Okay.
Many, they vote for them. And whatever it is spent in the southern provinces go for the benefit of the Sahrawi population in the southern provinces.
All right.
If Morocco was against the law, I think that the United Nations would have a say. Now, winning the hearts, yes. Morocco is winning. I'm sorry, I have to finish to answer your question. Morocco is winning the heart of the international community. 85% of the UN member states now they endorse the Morocco's proposal because they see that this is the only alternative to solve that conflict that endures for 45 years. Let's remember that if a child was born in Tindouf camps in 1975, he's now 45 years old.
Yes.
He doesn't have a diploma. Let's go to the southern provinces and see the real change.
Okay.
So,
all right.
I mean, it's very important to clarify this.
Thank you. Riccardo, there's not been a UN envoy to the region since May 2019. Has the United Nations taken its eye off the ball here, and this is why we are where we are today?
I mean, we can definitely say that there has been a degree of neglect by the international community. Obviously, I'm not necessarily saying that the UN is responsible for this, but there has been a degree of complacency and neglect by the international community, the main international actors that are involved who have an interest in this situation. That have basically forgotten about this situation because they have thought that it has been frozen for so long that it doesn't really pose any risks and any problems for anyone. So why would you rock the boat when there is nothing really upsetting the status quo? So the outcome of all this has been that, for example, we haven't, this conflict hasn't had a UN special envoy for more than a year now, and there has been basically a vacuum of leadership, of authority, of international leadership, international authority on this, which in my view has really contributed significantly to the latest escalation and the current situation. The fact that there was no significant or visible or tangible international pressure, international presence in this conflict has undoubtedly contributed to the sorry events of yesterday.
Sidi, Omar, you've got these people who've grown up in those refugee camps in Algeria, who've known nothing else but refugee camps. How much pressure are you under from them to resolve the status of Western Sahara?
Good, but let me just, before that, if you allow me, your guest, international analyst, said that Morocco is not described as an occupying power by the United Nations central organ, the General Assembly. And I refer the analyst and your respected viewers to General Assembly Resolution 3437 of 21st of November 1997, operative paragraphs 5 and 6. The
Yes,
same
sir.
resolution repeated in 3519 of 11 November 1980.
All right,
These
thank you, sir.
are documented resolution by the General Assembly that everybody can see to prove that Morocco's presence in Western Sahara is an act of occupation.
Okay.
To answer your question, indeed, we have a large refugee community living in Algeria. But those refugees were not driven by a natural disaster. They were driven by force, by Morocco when it invaded our territory on the 31st of October 1975. Indeed, they've grown up in refugee camps, deprived from the right to return to home, from the right to benefit from the resources that are being massively plundered by the occupying power.
And do you feel under pressure to resolve this issue for them then, at this, after so long, after 30 years?
Indeed, this situation has gone on for a long time, and one of your speakers spoke about the view of the international community as to the so-called frozen conflict, because there are certain parties that are interested in keeping things they are. But from yesterday, the Sahrawi people have spoken up, and they said to the international community, and particularly to the Security Council, if they cannot stop Morocco from its aggressions, the Sahrawis will do so. And by the way, this is the latest, if you have not heard about that. Our president has decreed a state of war. So we are in open war against the occupying forces of Morocco.
Okay.
There is no ceasefire any longer.
All right. Yasmine, Morocco has benefited really from the status quo, hasn't it, over the last 30 years? The vast phosphate deposits, the rich fishing waters. It's not in Morocco's interest to resolve this either, is it? It suits Morocco, I beg your pardon, to keep things as they are.
Well, I think the history plays for Morocco's side. The United Nations has changed the language because they knew about who should resolve that problem, and who should resolve that problem is Algeria. Now there is no such occupying word that exists in the UN resolution. The referendum is a bygone plan. It's a plan that belongs to the Cold War. Now we see all the countries, they endorse Morocco's autonomy plan, and many countries now are opening their consulate respecting the Vienna Declaration, and again talking about the phosphate tape, talking about the fish resources. They go for the benefit of the Sahrawi population in the southern provinces of Morocco.
Okay.
Let's go and see the development that is happening. And also something really important, talking about the
You have to be very quick, Yasmine.
Yeah, very quick. Talking about the refugees, there is no the Sahrawis. They live in despair in the camp in the Tindouf camps. They are fed up of the lies that was said by the Polisario leadership that they have to wait for their destiny. There is no destiny. It's 45 years, and now the international community goes in line with what Morocco proposes, because it's the history that gives its right to Morocco.
And we are out of time, unfortunately, but thank you to all our guests from Valencia, Sidi Omar, from Casablanca, Yasmine Hasnaoui, and from Lisbon, Riccardo Fabiani. And thank you, too, for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For more debate, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. We are at AJ Inside Story. From me, Bernard Smith, and the whole team here, bye for now.